the weather forecast with Akenugaz.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to the weather forecast. I hope you had an excellent day. Between tonight and tomorrow morning, we expect a calm weather to dominate the nation with a possibility of moderate precipitation in some parts of the littoral and the northwest regions. We may have a minimum of 18 degrees in the west region, with the Adamawa, center, east, south, and the southwest regions expecting temperatures as low as between 20 to 23 degrees. We take you detailed to the littoral region, where this evening may be heavy rainfall in the towns of Kongsamba and Yabasi, and this experience will progress in the littoral region until morning. Next, we take you over to the northwest, where this evening may be heavy precipitation in the entire region, and this experience will progress till morning except for Kumbo and Kambe. Lastly, we carry on to the far north, where this evening there may be no chance of precipitation in all the major towns, and by morning it would be cloudy in all the towns of the far north. To protect yourself and others against the coronavirus, keep a 1 meter distance with everyone. Do not greet by handshakes, and in case of symptoms, call the number 1510. Have a good night.
The Cameroon government the coronavirus continues to take the economy of Cameroon down the drain, with more and more businesses folding up and more workers being forced into technical unemployment. Prime Minister Joseph John Gutte reassures employers' unions in Cameroon that government is doing everything in its power to mitigate the effects of the coronavirus on the country's economy to save jobs and revenue-generating activities. Cameroon's Communication Minister René Emmanuel Sadi sets the records clear on the Gabu massacre, saying that the report of the Commission of Inquiry was a strong show of government's commitment to give all the truth on the incident that went viral on national and international media. Those are our top stories. Hello and welcome to the program. I am Ben Meno Pufong. The COVID-19 pandemic has been having a huge economic impact on budgetary revenue in most countries, including Cameroon. And financial experts are unanimous that it may not be the end of the tunnel, as the killer pandemic is not showing any signs of giving way soon. Trade between nations has dropped at a very, very low time, as well as domestic revenue has gone too low on the decline, as economic activities have almost grounded to a standstill. Clarice Array-Takong has a rundown of the key sectors that have been affected by the coronavirus pandemic.
To enable the state attain the targeted 4,951.7 billion CFA franc state budget for 2020, the government is counting on a couple of sectors. Customs and taxation top the list to get domestic revenue to the expected level. These were pre-COVID-19 projections. External trade at unprecedented low levels and more than 80% of SMEs in the red, according to Cameroon's Employers Union, spells trouble for customs and fiscal revenue, a report by the organization reveals. Unarguably, financial experts hold budgetary resources will not be coming in as expected, as taxes make up the country's main revenue source. A readjustment of the finance law is what many propose, basing the argument on the fact that few corporate accounts will stay blue if the spread of COVID-19 is not effectively checked. Meanwhile, with oil prices crashing globally, meeting the state's revenue target for this sector remains uncertain. $55 a barrel was the 2020 forecast. COVID-19 has brought the commodity selling for half that amount as demand plunges.
Cameroon has a policy to be subsidizing the pricing of the oil products. Now with this drop, this might push the government, as is in other way, to readjust the budget. And once there is this readjustment, it falls down on us the consumers, on the domestic, on our domestic domestic management, which means that we also have to readjust our domestic provisions, our domestic budgetary estimates, our expenditure, our lifestyle has to adjust it.
As the public health onslaught rages on, mobilizing budgetary resources has turned out to be a shaky and risky venture. Nevertheless, however the changing patterns of the economic tides, while officials closely monitor the various indicators at play, it won't be presumptuous to think about a plan B.
And it therefore goes without saying that the country is gradually grinding to a standstill, both locally and international, ever since government, even though government is still stoically supporting the population and the public health system in containing the spread of the coronavirus, and the task, or rather take it or leave it, the barrier measures decreed by government have a direct bearing on economic activities, with some businesses already folding up while others are still struggling to stand still. Constantine Baum has this appraisal of the micro and macroeconomic consequences of the coronavirus pandemic in the country.
The seeds of an unprecedented global economic crisis are already being felt in Cameroon. As the government strives to support its people and health systems, the economy of the nation is grinding to a halt. It is an uncertain and difficult time for most companies. Cameroon Airlines Corporation, CAMEROON, has already indicated to the government that she has put over 370 workers on technical leave, citing financial difficulties. They can't cover their costs, as many Cameroonians do not travel by air that much due to COVID-19. Road transporters are feeling the pinch as well. Activities of most transport agencies have been curtailed by the pandemic, as inter-regional movements have been discouraged.
Before, I made 8-10 trips. I mean, now we just made 2 or 3. And the bus is not full. Before we took 64 passengers, and we remain and took 48.
If planes are grounded following a lockdown of the airports, it means tourists don't come in any longer. A heavy blow to the hospitality and tourism industries and all their value chains. Conferences, seminars and other business trips that serve as a source of revenue to hotels have been cancelled.
We are closing down the hotel. We send some workers at home because there is not business, no business. There is not tourist. There is not some family who came to eat or some to do anything. All things is closed.
In a report published on March 13, 2020 in Addis Ababa, the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa predicts a 3.1% drop in Cameroon's revenue from tourism as well as oil and non-oil exports due to the coronavirus crisis. With bars and restaurants closing at 6 p.m., traders in chicken find it hard to make a good turnover. Clients who usually buy up to 10 chickens are difficult to find. Those running beauty parlors are now trying to adjust to the challenging situation as well by reducing the number of staff. The good thing is that everyone is aware that the drastic preventive measures taken by the government is to protect lives, although the measures have greatly affected their economic activities.
And with the decreed closure of drinking sports and other leisure points by 6 p.m., night business has also received a serious toll. The direct consequence has been the drop in the volume of night activities, most of whose workers are out of job. Gate rooms, waiters, and other merchants of nighttime pleasure are all on technical unemployment. And as Ewane Epole reports, the consequences may be dire, were the situation to persist again for a much longer period.
The business turnover of persons involved in the sale of roast fish, pork and chicken has drastically dropped due to the coronavirus pandemic.
Things are not given. At times, I will buy a roof for 5,000, 3,000, but now 1,000, 1,500 cannot stay finished. So we are really suffering. At first, I was having a benefit of 12,000, 15,000, but now I cannot boast of 5,000.
business now is very difficult. Presently, you cannot say in the afternoon. There's no consumer.
Those whose activity functioned at night around beer parlors that now close at 6 p.m. say their economic situation is critical.
We are no more selling because uniform people are coming to disturb us. That by 6, all the bars are locked. So we also were supposed to be locked. We don't supposed to sell.
Things have changed. The system have changed. You can come now like you open around 12. You go back. You need to close around 6 o'clock. You can sell just 5,000 francs under hard struggle.
A few of them now hang around road junctions and administrative offices during the day just to get a daily meal from the business.
Since the outbreak of the COVID-19 in Cameroon, life has not been the same again for actors in the world of music, cinema, and the other creators in the artistic industry. Nightclubs and other leisure sports have temporarily shut down. Workers are unemployed, film shooting on a hold, while some of the film festivals and musical concerts have been postponed. As some actors in this sector use this opportunity to create content, others have simply resorted to temporary jobs like driving taxis as a way of putting ends together. Emmanuel Mvemnui now paints the rather grim picture of the cultural industry as it presents itself today.
He played these instruments to earn a living until coronavirus broke out to quiet the noise. Life seems to be on a standstill.
It is very difficult. I have 19 rendezvous that have been cancelled. You can imagine the losses, but we keep working with hopes for better days.
Night activities have gone dead. No more musical concerts. Nightclubs, cabarets, and leisure sports temporarily out of business, leaving their workers unemployed.
In the absence of cabarets, we offer masterclass-based guitar classes among friends, and I also train some youths in music.
Cameras no longer roll for action. The red carpet moments with all the glitz and glam are of the past. Time thus for cinematographers to concentrate on creating content.
All the shooting have been stopped. Even if we don't have a lot of cinema halls in Cameroon, we have stopped showing films. Fortunately, this can give us the opportunity to work on the script writing. Myself, I'm just finishing not a new script, but I have a former script that I have forgotten sometimes. I take it again.
COVID-19 has really affected the film sector so bad. Cameroonians on the northwest and southwest produce the highest content in the whole of Central Africa. So, and you could testify with me that there have been movie premieres every month. Films that we've produced, films that we're still working on. Because of the coronavirus, we've limited our movement, our activities, including the festival, the Cameroon International Film Festival, CAMIF 2020 has been postponed.
And if taxi driving could do the trick for this comedian, the smiles of his customers are reassuring.
I'm a taxi driver, you know. I do my job. I take a passenger pay the money. It's not free. 0 you pay, and I don't sound franc. 0 sound franc.
None is staying idle. They focus on practicing their art until the dawn of normalcy.
And what about the sports industry? That one too has not been spared by the ongoing ravages of the coronavirus pandemic. Championships have been suspended the world over. Advertising companies that depended on sports to break through in their business are now licking their wounds, just like games of chance that have automatically been knocked out of business for want of games and other sports for people to bet on. Bolden Sama is here with a tale of an entirely overwhelmed sector by the COVID-19 pandemic.
A lonely sales agent of one of the renowned games of chance in Yaoundé, busy with her phone for several hours due to the absence of any customer. Like other games of chance, the sales points are less busy and their main offices scanty. Yes, difficult to believe, but the coronavirus spread negatively affects this sector given the suspension of most football championships and horse racing competitions.
This pandemic has seen a 70% drop in our businesses. It's not easy, but we manage and no staff has been relieved.
Same scenario it is in terms of advertising agencies that have seen their contracts with sports associations put on a hold due to the coronavirus spread. Yeah, marketing officials say all commands related to sports advertising have been cancelled and all sales suspended for the moment.
When a sponsor is interested in an event, a contract links him with the event organizer, which gives room for an offer and services rendered. If the event is postponed, the contract makes provisions for damages, but if not, both parties agree.
The suspension of most sports competitions equally affects sponsorship contracts between clubs, federations, and the different advertisers.
The fact that gatherings and public manifestations are suspended affects the organization of these events.
The absence of any competition for now makes it difficult for business in the world of sports to be carried out effectively, as all those involved hope to bounce back powerfully into full swing when the spread must have dropped.
Prime Minister Joseph John Gute today held high-level talks with members of Cameroon's Employers Guild, JICAM, on measures to be taken to mitigate the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the activities of the Employers Association and the Cameroon's economy. The consultations come on the heels of the one he held on Tuesday with members of the transport, hotel and restaurant trade unions. Sisa Kotamko reports from the Star Building.
Holding on the heels of a similar encounter with actors of the transport and tourist industries, government deemed it necessary to harmonize public and private sector energy to tackle the effects of COVID-19 on the economy and households. Prime Minister John Gute rallied ministers of related fields and heads of the Chamber of Commerce and the interprofessional groupings, JICAM, for what could be described as a stock-taking exercise in which proposals were geared towards the survival of local companies.
We have to make a vision of the future. There was a world before the COVID-19. There will have another world after that. We think that we have to get a very good ambition to rely on ourselves first. We have to see how our company, how our economic could rely and make the made in Cameroon, the good made in Cameroon. I don't say that we will make a good made in Cameroon.
The idea is to turn an adverse effect of COVID-19 to an indigenization of sectors where the country has comparative advantage.
We have to feed our body with the health, agri-industry, the transport, what you can say again, I will say especially the agri-industry, because today you see, if you don't have something to eat, we could not be here.
The businessmen made it clear that although they are facing the consequences of COVID-19 economically, distinctions should be made between short-term measures to tackle COVID-19 and the structural problems confronting the private sector over the years.
It is important that we speed up the structural reforms, including business law. We need more speed up to reforms in terms of justice, land property.
Other measures to be implemented to help companies efficiently deal with the health crisis range from fiscal, customs, internal debt, payment to financial policies.
We have asked for a stimulus, what we call a stimulus package, to stimulate the local demand, because we think that the COVID-19 is a pandemic, which means, as it says, that it's affecting the world. And until the world has really found a long-term solution, countries at individual basis will continue to face the problems.
While appreciating their contributions, Prime Minister John Gutte told the business community that their proposals will be forwarded to the head of state for immediate appraisal.
Even with the reassurance from the Prime Minister, the Cameroon Employers Guild is still rather preoccupied with the ongoing business climate in the country induced by the coronavirus. The business gurus are already predicting a disturbing business situation in the country in 3 months should the effects of COVID-19 continue to press hard on small and medium-sized enterprises, which are the backbone of the country's economy. Kilianda Ndifon puts the worries of the employers in perspective.
The Cameroon Employers Association GCAM study as recent as April 13 to 21 shows that over 90% of the Cameroon business world is made up of small and medium-sized enterprises. It is the sector that suffers more from the effects of COVID-19, with monthly losses of about 3 billion CFA francs for companies with a staff strength of plus 100. As a public-private business mediator, Enterprises of Cameroon, ECAM, has made proposals to government to redress the situation.
We proposed a couple of points in that regard. We also proposed measures in terms of the financial system, how the government could establish things like guarantee funds, also how they could take measures for tax relief, other social measures. For example, people who are not able to pay their CNPS, people who are not able to pay, setting their dues now, to see how these things can be postponed for this period and the people don't get to pay penalties.
Price stabilization and loan facilitation is also their concern.
Business people will always be business people, they are looking for profit. So we have also proposed how the government can come in to stabilize the market prices so that we don't have, a case of inflation and it doesn't get to affect the consumers at the end of the day.
GCAM study is predicting even tougher times in 3 months to SMS, especially those offering services, should the situation not get better.
And now joining me in this studio to understand what is actually happening in the country with regards to the COVID-19 is economic analyst Joyce Kimbi-Fowaju. Joyce, good evening and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Ben. Good evening.
Yes, and as it stands, the COVID-19 pandemic is leaving no sector of the national life unaffected. What do you think is the approach that government is using to raise money to face up to this pandemic?
Absolutely. It's causing a blow on the economy, as you heard from the series of papers you heard this evening. And government has been negotiating with bilateral and multilateral partners like the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank and the European Union on how to reschedule government's debt so that the scarce available finances could be redirected, Ben, into the fight against this pandemic. There was no money that was set aside to fight this pandemic, so that is an added fund. So some countries like France, they've already made their intention clear and known to Cameroon that they are ready to reschedule the debts. We are not talking about cancellation of debts. That should be noted. It is rescheduling debt. What does this mean? It means money that was to be used to pay debt for a certain or a given period. Government would use that same money, but now priority is the fight against the pandemic. They will use it to fight the pandemic while postponing the debt. So there should be no confusion between rescheduling the debt and cancellation.
Postponing and suspending interest?
No, it will all be within the agreement, the negotiations, because most countries know government is doing this. Some countries have already obtained it. So the debt, the interest will certainly be on hold, Ben.
And now the economy is one of the worst hit sectors, and there are measures that can be taken. Do you think there are really measures that can be taken to avoid a total collapse?
Exactly, and that's what government is certainly doing. The economy, there are some sectors like the enterprises. If you learned in some reports, you could understand that the enterprises, small and medium-sized enterprises, carry a chunk. It is the nucleus of the Cameroonian economy. While we have an economy that is pre-financed by some of these enterprises. So government has ordered an in-depth study on course, that is already on course, to determine the sectors hardest hit by the virus so that government could come into with assistance. You saw from the report that just as early as yesterday, April the 28th, 2020, the Prime Minister, head of government, held a working session with some tourism, with stakeholders of the tourism sector, hotel managers, and other sectors that have been touched. And we know that these three sectors are those that are hardest hit by the pandemic. And this afternoon, the head of government had another meeting with the Employers Association, GCAM, to find out how to contain, some people are already laying off, jobs are being lost, and how the sector is being threatened. So government is coming in to abate maybe a slump of this sector.
Now we are talking there about the global level. Let us narrow it down. What do you think that the government is doing to be able to support and stand by the suffering population in this period of the pandemic? The
government has proven before. You remember 2008 during the hunger strike, government did not allow its population, it stepped in. And you remember, you and I, we had about a 10% increase in salary. There were some incentives in the sector of taxes, and government is back with the same approach. You see, government is not only going to increase taxes, but it's going to look at some sectors and see how it can come in, maybe take off some taxes, as we heard some of the Employers Association talking about mitigation or mitigating some of their expenses. Maybe those who are importing, the importers will have to review some of their taxes. And to say the least, government has always been standing by its population. For instance, when you look at the Northwest and Southwest region, government has created a committee for the reconstruction of those sectors. That is a government that is people-oriented. It has never left its population. The head of state, as we speak, trucks and loads of trucks are moving into the hinterland, into the 360 subdivisions of the country with loads of equipment. That is the head of government. I mean, the head of state is part of the government, and the government of Cameroon has never stayed aloof. I mean, the beneficiaries are the population, and government has always been. Don't make a mistake. Ever since the first case of the coronavirus case was depicted in Cameroon, government has been taking care of its victims. They don't pay a franc. They have been doing mass testing of the population. Government have been footing the bills. They're calling on people to call a toll-free number. It is government. And it has been paying the bills. But mark you, in the 2020 finance bill, there was no line for this money set aside. And that's why government will not wait for money to come in. But government, because it's always by its population, it will run in no matter the cost, and make sure it contain it and spare its population from the worst. And that is just the government of Cameroon, Ben.
And maybe the best way to spare the government from this embarrassment is to pray for a rapid end for the coronavirus.
And that is certainly why you see the government as also, as through the Minister of Public Health, you've read from the papers when we've heard, they have even contacted some countries that have made pronouncement about some drugs. There's one of our priests in Douala. Government has already sent people to meet him to see. I mean, government is not waiting. Government has never waited, because government's concern is the well-being of you and I and its population. And certainly that's exactly what government has been doing and continues doing. As concerns the coronavirus that has been raging lives, threatening not only Cameroon, but the world. But we have been standing up then.
So may Corona spare Cameroon and spare the globe, Joyce.
Certainly it will.
Thank you very much for coming.
You're welcome.
Let's continue on with the news now, and to say the Cameroon government has launched a national survey to measure the socio-economic impact of the COVID-19 on businesses and households in view to bring support that would cushion the hardship caused by the killer pandemic. Loma Slim Davies in the following report says modalities and methodology used in the survey are tailored to specific needs. Luma?
The COVID-19 pandemic has rendered the Cameroonian economy idle. From industry to tourism, transport and distribution, the country's economic sector is going through torments from the COVID-19 scare. The government is, however, bent on easing the hardship on businesses and households.
We used to go to meet the household or to go to meet the owners of business. But now, because we have to stay indoors, we have to choose a methodology which is very pertinent. The first one is a WhatsApp. We are going to make a demonstration after the interview. The second is internet. And found that it was very important to imagine that we can combine WhatsApp, internet, to be sure that we can reach the targets.
With the nation's economy hard hit in several sectors and following the 20 barrier measures on orders of the government, a new impetus to government's response and to strengthen the resilience of populations and businesses is to accelerate the finalization of impact study of the virus to determine accompanying measures to support sectors of activity as well as the most fragile households.
Let's now move over to the Emergency Operations Center, where our reporter Baldwin Sama is standing by with updates. So let's put you this question, Baldwin. Tell me, where are we today with the updates on the number of new cases, the number of those who have been healed, as well as those who have died? Can you tell us?
Hello, Ben. Welcome to the Public Health Emergency Operations Center. As you must have noticed, it's Gilbert Ongene in place of Baldwin Sama tonight. And the good news out here, Ben, is that 19 new persons have recovered from the COVID-19. And that's good news for all those following us out there. And we're talking about the management of deaths as a result of the coronavirus tonight. And we have as guest tonight Dr. Atstar Hamadu, who is a public health expert. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for answering the questions of CRTV. Now we're talking about deaths, and we know that when the number of people who die from as a result of the coronavirus is very high, it becomes a problem. How do public health experts manage such issues?
Okay, that is a great question. You know, when the number of deaths is greater than normal, normally we will go to the collective graves because of the availability of space and even practical to make individuals burials, as is the case currently done with the involvement, you know, with the local authorities, the centralized and the administrative authorities.
So the International Red Cross Committee talks and insists on the fact that the respect of local cultures and religions must be taken care of when, or taken into consideration when burial is taking place. How is that respected in Cameroon?
You know, it's very important to note that the health authorities exchange throughout the process with family, and in particular, a person in charge. And according to religion, for instance, it allows to the family, in the respect of burial measures or position security positions, to make the prayer. The prayer can be done to accompany the spoils.
Okay, let's talk now about confidentiality. You know, when people die of coronavirus or COVID-19, there's this tendency of stigmatization. What is done by the medics to make sure that this does not take place?
You know, we cannot. People can mind like they want, and about the stigmatization, the government, we are improving the communication, the sensitization against the disease. That's why we are talking a lot about the coronavirus and how we prevent it, how to make people to ensure that what is around in backup of that disease. So it's just the key is the communication and sensitization.
We talked a while ago about mass burial. Now, what other measures are being taken into consideration in order to make sure that family members could be able to identify that this person is a family person and that one is not a family person, in the case where there are mass burials as a result of many deaths?
That is a great question. You know, in that case, fortunately, the government is making every effort not to arrive at this situation. And otherwise, we will just apply the procedure established by our forensic medical experts to to apply to identify the remains.
And what are those? Is it an autopsy? What is it?
No, we cannot do an autopsy.
No.
It's, at all, we cannot do an autopsy, but we have the procedure to prevent, because even we have the death, it can transmit it, it can infect somebody. Yeah. So we have to prevent, to make certain procedures that established already by our forensic medical expert. Okay. So we will just apply it to
maybe those procedures are confidential that we can't say to the public. Concretely, what do we do?
Concretely, it depends. You know, it's very difficult in the management of disease, in that case, of as contagious as COVID. And we, in the mass burial, we can identify before. We can make the photography, for example, for instance, and before to do the burials.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Adsa Hamadu, for answering the questions of CRTV. Ben, that's the bid we put together out here, and the watchword, as usual, is that all the barrier measures and prescriptions instructed by the government of Cameroon should be respected by the population out there in order to stay safe. Over to you, studio.
Thank you very much, Gilbert Ongene. Excuse me for having called you Baldwin Sama. Between Baldwin and Gilbert, it's just a stone throw because the two of you are always together. But all the same, we got the good news from the Emergency Operations Center. Thanks for everything. And on to the news now. Frontline fighters in the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic are nurses. As the days go by, the services are being intensified by the government so that they save more lives in hospitals and other specialized centers across the country. Our reporter Alice Bay was at the Jamo Hospital here in Yaoundé to follow them on their routine activities and now reports.
As early as 6 a.m. every morning, Bio Moni CV and her colleagues get set for work.
The team of the nurse, we go there, the two nurses with a doctor. Sanitary attendants, we wait for them outside there. In every room, they will go and do the treatment to the patient. They will ask whether the patient has another problem. They also give his food. Each patient has breakfast, a lunch, and a dinner every day. So we are entering there when we want to give the breakfast. We also do the treatment.
No matter the stressful situation of their job, the nurses are ready to render services to the patients.
At the beginning, it was very difficult, but now we have been used to. At the end of the day, we have the stress. We have the feeling that maybe the next person we're going there to lie down will be us. But it is our duty, knowing that we are also exposed.
In the course of assisting the COVID-19 patients, some friends and family members have become scared of them.
In the middle of people, like here, the ones that are not working here in this unit with us, they are afraid of me. They don't want to stay beside me. When I arrive at home, my children who used to come and embrace me just after my arrival, they cannot.
As brave soldiers on the war front, they are happy when their patients are healed and relieved when no deaths are recorded.
I'm very happy at the end of the day when I did not lose any patient. I'm really happy. I give thanks to the Almighty God because we did not lose a patient, and my colleague, none of them has been infected.
At the end of each service, they are disinfected before leaving the isolation unit.
Labour ministers from Africa and their collaborators have been brainstorming on how to ensure that workers remain protected during and after the COVID-19 pandemic. This was happening during a virtual meeting holding under the auspices of the Commission for Social Affairs of the African Union Commission. As Yoti Kaleli Songa reports, the bone of contention was how to guarantee the workers in the informal sector so that they do not lose their jobs as a result of the pandemic.
Welcome, how are you?
I'm great, how are you?
Very busy with COVID-19.
Camaraderie precedes the preoccupying factors that unite these ministers of labor on the African continent at this virtual meeting.
The African Union is fixed on securing the African economy and thought it wise to regroup African ministers of labor as well as trade union representatives. With Labor Day around the corner, it is important for workers in enterprises to better understand what the authorities are doing to save their jobs and the enterprise.
Given that 80% of the workforce at the informal sector are women and youth, protecting them and finding ways to secure their jobs and income are of utmost importance to the AU. Hit by the coronavirus with import and export on hold, the African continent must come out strong by ensuring the employees' safety.
Particularly those issues relating to social protection, those issues relating to the protection of jobs, support to small and medium enterprises and work in the informal economy, as well as issues relating to social dialogue and bringing effective social dialogue into the conversation.
For Africa to survive COVID-19, inclusive, sustainable responses by the key actors in labor and social security have also been recommended by the AU.
The special support package from the head of state against the COVID-19 in the littoral region has arrived in Douala. The governor of the region, Samuel Jodone Ivawa-Diboa, was on hand to receive the presidential package. Kishi Lawrence reports.
The office of the Littoral Governor was the assembly point for the lorries that brought in the hygiene items. The officials did not remove them instantly, but held a meeting to plan the distribution to the 34 councils in the region. Hand sanitizers, buckets, soap and face masks, enough for each household. In a region that is second highest in the number of COVID-19 patients, the officials could only be happy to receive the special gift from Yaoundé.
The Littoral region is very proud of the gifts of the head of state, and with the senior judicial officers, the DOs, we are going to spend them in every division. The DO, the mayor, the chief, the commandant brigade and the other one are there to be sure that all those gifts are going to be reached at the level of every family.
Hoping that the distribution begins soon to save lives by breaking the infection chain.
And the package to the Northwest region was received by the Secretary General of the region, Van Mekala, who said it will help boost the observance of the COVID-19 barrier measures as prescribed by government. Gonige Shwabo reports from Bamenda.
There were 4 truckloads of the COVID-19 preventive kits which arrived in Bamenda from Yaoundé. The presidential package comprised 1,870 cartons of soap, 1,020 jelly cans of hand sanitizers with a capacity of 30 liters each, as well as 6,800 hand washing buckets. We were told that some 34,000 face masks meant for the Northwest region were still to be brought in from Yaoundé. While expressing the profound gratitude of the Northwest population to their benefactor, President Paul Biya, the Secretary General at the Northwest Governor's Office described the President's largesse as a welcome relief.
Now that we have received those materials, the population are going to make good use of those materials to protect themselves.
The Sub-Director of Civil Protection at the Ministry of Territorial Administration, Gilbert Trente, who led the convoy transporting the anti-COVID-19 kits, made it clear that the presidential gift was for everybody, especially the less privileged. The coronavirus preventive material will be dispatched to the 7 divisional headquarters of the Northwest region for distribution to the 34 subdivisions in the region.
And it was almost the same scenario in the Southwest region as Governor Bernard Okalia-Bilai received the presidential package, which he committed himself to personally distribute to all the subdivisions of the region. Here is a report on that event with Annabelle Ndike Enonyang.
These 4 trucks of goods that arrive at the governor's office comprises cartons of preventive kits and buckets. The items were handed to Governor Bernard Okalia-Bilai by an escort from the National Gendarmerie. The governor says the special largesse from President Paul Biya will go a long way to combat the spread of COVID-19 in the region. He added that several Several commissions have been put in place at the 6th Divisional and 81 Subdivisional headquarters in the region for the distribution of the items to commence this Thursday, April 30th.
And all the 8 senior divisional officers of the West Region are already in possession of the presidential package, as they intend to start taking them to the various subdivisions in the hours and days ahead. We have details in this report with Hananjo.
As soon as truckloads of the gifts arrived, the governor proceeded with distribution modalities here at his esplanade. Prior to that, he called for transparency during the eventual distribution to councils.
The commission that has been put in place to ensure the distribution should make sure that this presidential gift gets to the population, and the population should make good use of the gift. The gifts are very symbolic. You have the soap, which is meant for washing of hands, disinfectants, asking people to disinfect themselves, as well as the other gifts.
It is now left to the senior divisional officers to do their own part and ensure that the population in all the 40 councils of the West Region effectively feel the impact of the head of state's involvement in the fight against the COVID-19.
The Cameroon government's spokesperson, Rene Emmanuel Sadi, yesterday gathered the press to make a declaration on the Ngabu event and to shed more light on the results of the report of the Commission of Inquiry that was set by the President of the Republic. According to the government spokesperson, Minister Rene Emmanuel Sadi, the results established the truth and brought perpetrators to book, much to the satisfaction of the national and international community, though some people of bad faith still found fault in the results of the Commission of Inquiry. Beatrice Ngum captured the high moments of that press declaration.
The declaration was brief, yet serious in tone. Those who have taken to social media platforms and media outlets tagging government of lies telling on the Ngarbu incident after the results of the Joint Inquiry Commission have missed the debate, government spokesperson says. He stressed government had no intentions to distort the facts, rather the quest to establish the truth was ultimate.
What is probably important is that the findings of the inquiry clearly established the responsibility of certain elements of the army in the Ngarbu incidents and clarify the circumstances in which this incident occurred.
Minister Rene Emmanuel Sadi says, with the conclusions of the inquiry now known, there is no need to stigmatize the defense forces.
As for our defense and security forces, they deserve the encouragement of the entire nation in carrying out the mission of bringing things back to normalcy in particularly difficult conditions, faced with terrorist and secessionist armed gangs in the northwest and southwest regions. The Cameroonian army is that of neither a region, a tribe, nor a political party. The blunders that some elements of the army may commit at times and according to circumstances cannot in any way tarnish the image of our defense and security forces.
The international community, he emphasized, has saluted the results, much to government's satisfaction.
We are therefore entitled to congratulate ourselves on the fact that the international and national community unanimously warmly welcomed this remarkable gesture which honors the President of the Republic, ignoring the small, provocative, incongruous, and inappropriate comments made by some of our fellow citizens.
With the facts on Garbu now established, government through this declaration is calling on the populations of the Northwest and Southwest regions to collaborate with local authorities and the defense forces so that peace can reign again in the restive regions.
Our time is up. Thanks for yours and good night.